Every time Robert McDaniel has the opportunity to raise his draft stock, it seems like he always does. And the Jackson State Pro Day is just the latest example of this fact. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. We'll wrap up today's episode by taking a look at Christian Ng's inclusion in the slam dunk contest this Thursday. It's going to be a part of Final Four weekend. Just stay tuned. In segment 2, Diamond Johnson is simply a different kind of HBCU prospect. I want to break down what sets her apart from other WNBA prospects that we've seen in the recent past. But this whole thing starts off with something that I have great pleasure and great joy to talk about, and that is the stock of Robert McDaniel. I said this in the open, where I kind of feel like every single chance that Robert McDaniel gets to improve his draft stock, he does it every time. There's not a moment in which he misses. I was first introduced or first really put on notice about what McDaniel was capable of last year, right before the season started. And that was when Coach G came on and gave his top 10 prospects. I feel like Coach G was ahead of his time. And y'all know that's my guy, so I'm going to definitely big up him. But I feel like Coach G came on this show, and when he said, if you put Robert McDaniel in the right position, he will be the best prospect in Black college football. There's nothing that Robert McDaniel has done to show Gerald to be wrong. There's nothing that he's done to say that belief and that confidence in him was unwarranted. Listen, it's draft season, and I'm extremely excited to get into these prospects. So to be able to start with Robert McDaniel's pro day, in my opinion, makes a lot of sense. He was our number one prospect going into the year. If I'm not mistaken, I've talked to G about it before. We haven't done it officially, but I think he'll be his number one prospect now that we're going out of the season. So it makes sense that he's the first prospect in draft season that we talk about. For those who really know, like, draft season has been going on, but it's April now. We're in the first day of April. So let's get it, man. I'm excited. But Robert McDaniel had a very strong pro day. We've just talked about how the tape was strong and how he's lived up to the promise during his last year at Jackson State. The athleticism meets the tape. They're both on equal footing. And when those two things align, a lot of times your draft stock will rise as well. That's the reason I think that Robert McDaniel has to be on the short list, maybe top 2 or 3 of HBCU players who are likely to hear their name called. When you just look at him, he's a really well put together defensive back. When you look at his tape, he's had versatility playing corner, playing slot, playing safety. He's done a ton of things on the defense. So, versatility, especially as a late round pick, is always going to be a big deal. But what do the testing numbers look like? And they line up too. And I'm going to compare Robert McDaniel's pro day to Robert McDaniel's HBCU combine. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to compare those two things because they are similar, but you saw him improve at really important spots. So I'm going to give the basic numbers and a couple of advanced numbers, or one advanced number that really paints the picture of a difference. So at Robert McDaniel's pro day, he ran a 4.55. He jumped 39 and a half, and he also jumped to 10-11, in addition to having 14 bench press reps and a 7-1-3 on the three cone. Let's look at what he did at the HBCU Combine, because he did these same things. He had a 4.55 40, 38 and a half inch vertical, a 10-8 broad jump, and he had a 7.25 on the broad, or excuse me, on the three cone, and 14 bench press reps. So when you look at Robert McDaniel's pro day versus his combine, it's kind of similar, but there's some huge differences. You know, he runs a 4.55 on both, so he's a clear 4.55 runner. But at his pro day, he has a 1.52 in the 10-yard split. You pair that with a 39.5-inch vertical, which is 1 inch better than what he did at the HBCU Combine, and then also a 10-11 broad, which is 3 inches better than he did at the HBCU Combine. And you see a player with improved explosiveness. That's that fast twitch. That's that 10-yard that we're talking about. That all pairs with explosiveness. His long speed is his long speed. But improvements in the broad jump and 10-yard split shows that he had a more explosive pro day than he did combine. And he was already explosive at that first event. You look at the three cone, the agility is much better. He goes from a 7.25 to a 7.13. Bench press is the same, but you're looking at these numbers in critical places like a safety, like a nickel back, like a corner. You want to see some explosiveness. And seeing that improvement at his pro day, I think is a big deal, to me at least. And I'll say this, McDaniel feels like a player that is just gaining more and more steam. We often have conversations about who's going to get drafted, who's not going to get drafted. I don't know if you can create a 3-player list of most likely HBCU prospects to hear their name called and not include Robert McDaniel. You've seen it all year long. Like I said, he has the versatility, played cornerback, played nickel, played safety. That's always going to bode well for you when talking about your draft stock, especially when we're discussing late round picks. These type of traits are going to have great benefits for him when talking about hearing his name actually called. The athleticism is there. We just went through the testing. The tape is there. And he also spoke about how he's talked to over 16 teams. And I know he had a lot of meetings at the HBCU Combine to start off with. I would really like to know how many he is up to now. And when he says over 16, are we at about 20? I would assume that if he says over 16, we're probably somewhere between 18, 19 teams. I think if it was 20, he would have said 20. So I'm going to say it's about 18 or 19 teams that he had met with. Now, he did say he met with that team right over my right shoulder. That's over my left shoulder. It's on the right side of my screen right here. I thought I was so clever. But no, he did meet with this team over my left shoulder, the New Orleans Saints. And I'll say this isn't Locked On Saints. Go check out Ross Jackson. He does a great job. But if the Saints were to draft Robert McDaniel, that's a team that could utilize his versatility. I don't know if he's not playing corner for the Saints. I'll say this. I don't think he's going out there and playing corner. But I do think having that slot role, I think benefits him. I think the safety role would benefit him. That's just how I'm looking at it. And I'm viewing it through the lens of the Saints, where he could learn to be a safety. He could play a little bit of slot. He could be that versatile piece where you go into dime packages that you know he can play multiple different roles, especially as a younger player. Robert McDaniel has a lot going for him. He has a lot going for him. When you just look at the different traits that Robert McDaniel has, there's a lot of things for you to get attracted to on the field. It just simply is. Great athleticism, versatility. He comes from a program that we know has been respected. We know that. You see the interest at the HBCU Combine. And then here's the thing. He also played well during practice. We don't talk about this enough. We don't talk about players who had a great combine and then went to the Legacy Bowl and had a good Legacy Bowl and then had a good Legacy Bowl game. Because we could practice versus the game is different. He had a good breakup. I don't remember what team it was. I think he was Team Robinson. Yeah, he was Team Robinson. Gaither wasn't really challenging the secondary. That Bowler, Burgess, McDaniel secondary, they ain't want nothing. No part of that. No part of that. But The one time that I do remember them testing McDaniel, he made a really good play. I thought he showed the explosiveness that we just detailed to be able to close the gap and break up the ball. He didn't have to dislodge it with a hit. He punched the ball out. Robert McDaniel is one of my favorite prospects in this draft. Without a doubt, Robert McDaniel is one of my favorite prospects in this draft from the HBCU level because of all of the reasons I pointed out, the versatility, the athleticism, the intrigue that he gets. I don't do a lot of this guy has this grade. That's not me. That's Gerald Huggins saying this is the grade I have on this player. Man, I should come in with a top 5 most fascinating prospects. I got to do that. It won't be this week. It'll probably be next week. It may be the beginning of next week, or maybe it'll be Friday. One of the two. One or two. It'll probably be Friday or Monday. Top 5 most fascinating prospects in the draft. I love when I talk my way into into a topic. Anyway, let's push forward and look at Diamond Johnson because she's not like the HBCU prospects that we've seen recently. She is much different as a player. And I want to break down the things that make her different as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where'd all my funds go? I thought I was living lavish, and all of a sudden I need to start nickel and diming. Maybe you've been dining out too much, online shopping, going to entertainment, going to the movies every week. It can all catch up to you and you can lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center that allows you to track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you don't have to have this app for this app for that, this app for this app for that. You can just have Monarch Money. It's that all-in-one type of convenience that I believe sets Monarch Money apart from all of its other competitors. No more juggling multiple apps. Monarch is going to help you check your finances, track spending, and plan your long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for 50% off your first year. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. And listen, it's almost time for the conclusion of the college basketball tournament, both on the men and women's side. So if you are lucky enough to be in the San Antonio area, maybe you want to go check out the HBCU All-Star game. Maybe you want to check out the dunk contest. Maybe you want to check out one of the Final Four matchups. All of that is open to you. You just have to take advantage by going to Game Time. Download the app. And if you're new, use the code LOCKEDONCollege. It'll give you $20 off your first purchase. If you're not lucky enough to be in the area for a Final Four matchup, you can look at this. I told you it's spring football season. Let's see. Arlington Renegades. If I could spell Renegades, that'd be good, wouldn't it? But Arlington Renegades tickets. I go to Game Time right now, and it says $12 for the next game this Sunday. It's really that simple. So you go ahead and download Game Time and get $20 off when you use the code LOCKEDONCollege. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On College Basketball. They do a phenomenal job, and they're going to break down the biggest games that you need to watch. It's the Final Four. Y'all know what time it is. But Diamond Johnson should be a part of Final Four weekend. The Final Four week should be in that women's all-star game. But Diamond Johnson is a unique HBCU prospect for a couple of reasons. When you look at the WNBA and their relationship with HBCU players, as is the case with all professional sports, there's not a lot of HBCU talent that has infiltrated the league. Okay. But when you're talking about the W, at least recently, you've had 2 draft picks. You had one in 2022. You had one in 2024. There have been a total of 7 women who have been drafted to the WNBA from an HBCU. In case you were curious on who has the most, Howard has the most with 3 players, and Jackson State is second with 2. That was all recent. That Jackson State was recent. I'm not going to compare Diamond Johnson to players who were drafted in the 90s or the early 2000s. What I will say is, if you go through the history of HBCU players drafted, it goes 97, 98. You had 3 players in 2002 who heard their name called. And then you had to go 20 more years until Amisha Williams Holiday was drafted. Then you go 2 years later, Angel Jackson is drafted. I'm going to compare Johnson to Jackson and Williams Holiday. That's who I'm going to compare her to, because that's her recent competition. And when you compare Diamond Johnson to Williams Holiday to Jackson, now that's where you start to see a distinction. And I don't just mean in the fact that, well, this is one Norfolk State player opposed to 2 Jackson State players. No, not something as trivial as that. The difference is, one, they all transferred in, but what Diamond Johnson did at her other locations was much different. And then secondly, she's a guard opposed to bigs. That's probably the most clear difference. Is Amisha Williams Holiday and Angel Jackson were bigs. They were defensive players of the year. They were more Kiera Wheeler types. But you look at Diamond Johnson, who is a guard. The thing about the W that makes it difficult to project whether or not the difference in position matters is that we've seen players get drafted, but they don't make it to the roster. And that happens a lot. There's a lot of rookies who just don't make the cut in the W. It's not a lot of play. It's not a lot of opportunities. There is a smaller window. So I expect Diamond Johnson to hear her name called. I honestly do. And I think that it'll happen before Angel Jackson or Amisha Williams Holiday. Let's see, if I had to look at Amisha Williams Holiday, she was drafted first pick in the 3rd round. I think that Diamond Johnson could see herself picked before that. I really do. And then Angel Jackson was kind of at the end of that 3rd round, because I remember not thinking she was going to get drafted. Let's see. She was the 36th pick. So it's a little bit different. Anyway, the point is, with Diamond Johnson being a guard, it's a different skill set. It's a different toolbox that she has to dig into. And I wonder if she has really good hands. And I think that maybe the ability to be a pickpocket could transition better than being a shot blocker. Maybe you're hoping. But the most clear difference between Diamond Johnson and the other players who have been drafted recently is when she was at her previous schools, she was an impact player. She was an honorable mention for the all conference. She was a player who was, I think she was a freshman of the year contender. She was a candidate. I think that's the word I was really looking for, but she was a freshman of the year candidate. I think she was an all freshman player. Like, you're looking at Diamond Johnson at the worst being a premier player at the high major level. You're looking at Diamond Johnson being somebody who came in making a lot of noise, being somebody who was a big time grab for Norfolk State. I think that all of those things that we look at do make a difference. I think what you did on a different level of competition alters things. Mid-major player of the year. Like, you're looking at her in contention. I combine contention with contender and say competitor. That's what happened. Anyway, but you see all of these critical acclaim that Diamond Johnson gets. And I do believe that she's different. I do believe that she's a more offensive threat than you see Angel Jackson, Amisha Williams Holiday being. She's a more, with her being a smaller player, you're looking at her being a ball handler. It's just so many different things. And I wonder how much of that contributes to how she pans out in the W. And I should probably get somebody on here who is better to speak about that than I am. But to me, there's a drastic difference in how you would utilize a guard versus a center who is a shot blocking presence. It's one role versus, all right, do we want to try you on ball? Do we want to try you off ball? Do you provide defense as far as being a pickpocket? Are you a good facilitator? Are you a good scorer? It's different things as opposed to the 2 bigs who were mostly shot blockers. That's where we knew their value would lie on that next level. So just things to think about. Excuse me. Anyway, as we push forward, I want to look at Christian Ings, who He's going to be a part of the dunk contest that's also a part of Final Four weekend. And I think that that's super cool. I think this is a great moment. I want to highlight it as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies that you need from the site made for skilled traders. Supply House, it doesn't matter if you're into HVAC, plumbing, or electrical. Supply House is the reliable way to order your products online. Their easy to use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product information to help you get the job done right. Plus, with the complete inventory of over 200,000 parts with over 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. I hate when they call me with them fake people. I got to talk to a fake person. Give me a real person. Supply House kills all of my frustration, all of my worry, and they give me exactly what I need. So join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks and use the code SH5 for 5% off your first order.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Christian Ings is going to be in a dunk contest, and I think for a player who went, is viral the right way to say that? I don't think that viral is the right way to say that. But he was on SportsCenter for having 2 really big dunks. And here's the thing, is when you watch Christian Ings' dunks, you see a player who has explosiveness, you see a player who has speed, who has a good vert, and he has power. I would love to see what he does when it comes to adding the component of creativity, because when you're talking about a dunk contest, it's not just about being strong, it's not just about being explosive, it's not just about your vert. I do think that the power of a dunk does lead to a little bit more impressiveness, just a little bit, because a lot of times the novice, the untrained eye, I don't be noticing how much power goes into these dunks. I'll be thinking about the creativity. I'll be thinking about the showcase. And then the announcer be like, man, that was a powerful dunk. Most guys aren't able to hammer it home with that much strength when they do it. I love the dunk contest. I know it gets bashed a lot, but I love the dunk contest. I can't even lie. But Christian Ings is going to have the opportunity to showcase his creativity now. And I know that a big reason he was able to get into this event is because of those dunks he had late in the season that ended up making it top 5 on SportsCenter. I think one was 3 and the other one 1. I think one was 3 and the other was 1. And people after that were praising his dunking ability, saying like, no, he really does this. Don't get it twisted. He really is a dunker. Now we get to see if he's a dunk contest dunker, because you look at a guy like Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards was asked about doing the dunk contest, and he said he didn't want to do it because he doesn't have any moves. And this is where I think that Christian Ings has to really come ready to give it his all, because what he did in the game is great in the game. And some people are in-game dunkers. Some people are dunk contest dunkers. I don't know what Matt McClung dunks like, or Matt McClung, how do you say his name? McClung. I don't know what his dunks are like in the G League. I have no idea. But when it comes to getting out there and jumping over cars and doing X, Y, and Z, he can get active in that capacity. So for Christian Ings, it'll be a big time stage. I'm not sitting here looking at draft conversations or anything of the sort. But what I do think it provides him is a chance to showcase who he is for many people who don't know, who maybe missed that. Because I know a lot of people aren't checking out Norfolk State games. There's going to be eyes on this dunk contest that no one, or excuse me, there's going to be eyes on this dunk contest that weren't on eyes that didn't have eyes at Norfolk State. That's what I'm trying to say. Basically, there's going to be a group of people who were not watching HBCU basketball. I don't know who else is in this event, but what I will say is that there will be some people who only watched Missouri or only watched Kentucky or Duke or whatever. And now they get to see Christian Ings in the green. And this is a part of basically all-star weekend for the college sports, for college basketball, because it's the Final Four week. You're going to see an all-star game, two of them, men's and women's, which we're going to talk about the women's game at some point this week, maybe tomorrow. It's going to have the dunk contest, going to have a three-point contest. You know, Ings is actually a pretty good three-point shooter. He doesn't shoot a lot. He didn't even put up 100. So I'm not advocating for him to be a dunk contest and three-point shoot contest guy. But this will be in San Antonio. It's called the 36th Annual State Farm College Slam Dunk and Three-Point Championships. So I suggest that you make time to go out and watch that. I think that is going to be a really fun event. It's on Thursday, April 3rd. I will try to make sure I am watching it. As long as I'm not recording, as long as I'm not trying to get the content to the people, then we can do this up. But Christian Ings, I'll be watching to see what type of dunks he gives you. Anyway, on tomorrow's episode, let's see what we have already lined up for tomorrow, because I know what we're gonna lead off with both tomorrow and the day after. Oh, tomorrow, it's about how Norfolk State spring season. We're doing a whole lot of Spartan talk, huh? Norfolk State spring season is all about the quarterback position, and that's because of who their head coach is, Michael Vick. So yeah, I'm watching to see what the quarterback is able to do and listening to see how they're reporting on the quarterback. But in the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.